Battlefield 2042 officially released on November 19th, and it's already a fucking shit show. If early access wasn't enough, new bugs arose even after a patch was deployed just before the game released, and players are not happy. If you are one of the poor souls that spent money on this game, then I feel for you because I did too. I'm sure game owners have seen each lobby's text chat filled with players calling out the state of the game. It's nothing subtle either. Some bugs, like being stuck in a crouch position, require you to get creative with solving the problem, like finding a spot to jump from to pull your parachute in order to stand again. Others, like being stuck in the down state after being killed, require you to leave the match you're in because there is no way to get out of it aside from just quitting. I'm sure this is not what any of us wanted when we bought into a new Battlefield title. Before we get into it, I just want to ask that if you're not already subscribed, please hit those like and subscribe buttons as it helps out the channel and video immensely, as well as check out my socials in the description down below to keep up with me outside of YouTube. With all that out of the way, let's get into the video. In my last video about Battlefield 2042, I was dewy-eyed and hopeful that the game would soon be fixed with a day one patch, even going on to say that I was having fun. While I was having fun, I continued to play. And as I played more matches, the more everything that was wrong with the game became more apparent. Let's start with the game at its core, the gameplay. While a lot of shooters implement recoil and weapon bloom, the bloom here seems to be pretty extreme, and in some cases so does the recoil. Though a lot of players seem to be focusing on the bloom, as it's pretty frustrating to deal with, even in close quarters engagements, I found myself using SMGs more often than I did assault rifles, as I had more success controlling them than anything else. Alongside weapon bloom, hit registration seems to be an ongoing issue, but that seems more like a bug than it is a core gameplay problem, but I figured I'd mention it here. The next thing was something that was very frustrating to me, and that was being in a gunner position in a vehicle. The severity of the issue varies from vehicle to vehicle, but it's very difficult to be effective as a gunner as the vehicle jaunts around with the pilot movement or map geometry. The aiming is insanely jittery. There are also cases where I was limited by the axis of the weapon and would suddenly not be able to aim at targets as the vehicle moved around. After many attempts to be in those gunner positions, I just gave up on it and merely spawned on vehicles to get closer to the fight faster. Speaking of vehicles, the vehicles are pretty overpowered. I know in a combined arms scenario, vehicles will be a force you wouldn't want to be up against as infantry, but in the sense of a video game, they dominate the maps most of the time. However, the one true culprit amongst all of the vehicles, in my opinion, is the hovercraft. Its armor and mobility make it a nightmare to contend with, and the occupants can't be shot out from the front, only the sides, and that's if you get a decent shot on them, since they can be in and out of a fight in an instant. Though we did get some gems on social media, like how they could scale buildings for some reason. I believe DICE mentioned they would adjust the hovercrafts, and I hope they do, since they really make being an infantry player very frustrating. Next, I wanted to talk about the maps because these maps are huge. So much so that the firefights are spread out and it's difficult to feel the scale of 128 players in a single game. Now, I understand you wouldn't want that many players clustered that close together, but it makes getting to objectives a pain if you don't have a way to get there faster. If you die attempting to take an objective, but your squad is in combat, you don't have a beacon, or there aren't any vehicles to spawn into, you're hoofing it. And it could take a while sometimes. Not only that, but you can get sniped along the way, so you gotta start that trek over. Have fun! Now for this next part, I wanted to focus on specialists. I had more time to play the game and try out most of the specialists at the time of making this video. I still firmly believe that specialists in Battlefield was a mistake. It's so odd coming from past Battlefield games with classes, and then arriving to 2042 where your kit is both limited and unique at the same time. Allow me to elaborate on that. Sure, we have specialists that have unique capabilities, like Sundance having a wingsuit or Angel being able to call in a loadout crate to swap between your pre-made loadouts. However, I now have to choose between a rocket launcher and a repair tool. In Battlefield 4, I could have both as the engineer class. I could deal damage to enemy vehicles and repair our own. Now I have to choose. To be honest, I think I only used the repair tool once in 2042, and since vehicles kind of repair themselves outside of combat, I found myself not needing to use it. It's a weird choice that I'm sure we all know is to sell outfits for the specialists and to create lore around them like it's Apex Legends or Valorant. I'm sure another layer to this is to entice the community to create content revolving around these characters like comics or to create memes, but it just makes the game feel really fucking bad. Another thing about specialists is team play. Team play can vary depending on if you're playing Conquest or Breakthrough from my experience. In Conquest, everyone is too spread out to really be effective in most scenarios, running back and forth between control points and whatnot. Breakthrough, on the other hand, I saw more ammo and medical crates, saw more players reviving down teammates, etc. I figured this is because both teams are being focused on a single sector at any given time, that the players that do want to play their roles are able to do so more effectively. Also, just really quick, the marketing and overall lore for this game felt very dire, right? Two major superpowers fighting for dominance, displaced nations trying to find a new home and fighting for it, natural disasters wreaking havoc in the world. This tone was something that drew me in and was something I was wanting to see in the game. And to a point it is. A lot of the voice lines heard while in-game have a very desperate vibe to them. Some sound hoarse, like they've been yelling callouts and orders for days or weeks on end. It can get pretty immersive. But then you have these post-game flows that highlight the best players and where your squad placed, and that's fine. It's just the voice lines and animations during this that completely kill the tone. These specialists act like they're happy to be here, that it's all a game to them. They're weirdly competitive in their choice of words too, saying things like, "I'm the best," or "I'm ready for round 2.
Ooh, sorry. I mean, I am as shocked as you.
That's it? I'm ready for round 2.
All work, no play.
No, you're not ready for round 2. You're ready to stop fighting and end the war. Jesus Christ, this game. Now, compare that with this short part of their promotional material.
Watch out!
Not to mention, we got a short film that had a much darker and heavier tone than this game has. I'm pretty sure we'll be getting more of these as things progress, but I honestly would have preferred a full-on campaign rather than not having one. I'm not saying Battlefield needs one, I just like me some story, so I guess I'll settle for these. If you haven't seen the Exodus short film, definitely give it a watch, it's pretty good. Now, back to what I was saying before. It's like DICE was trying to emulate other hero-based games with this playful banter bullshit. Like Apex, it makes sense for those characters to be all cocky and whatnot. A bunch of them are bounty hunters, one's a happy robot, some want revenge on specific people. The new one is a simulacrum that has a teleport sword for fuck's sake. It's not grounded in a believable fiction. Battlefield 2042 is based in the near future of the real world. Now, I'm not saying there aren't people like this, but wouldn't it make sense for these characters to be a little worried about not having a home or not knowing what's going to happen next for them? These no-pats are very comfortable with their current situation. Now that I got that off my chest, let's move on. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that All Out Warfare only included 2 game modes, Conquest and Breakthrough. As of right now, there is no team deathmatch, no small conquest, air superiority, hardcore variants, none of that is here, just the 2 game modes by themselves. You're better off playing Portal for more varied game modes, and that may be the point here, but it's surprising that the product we all paid for only has 2 game modes. Well, aside from Hazard Zone, which is another thing entirely. So let's talk Hazard Zone. This mode is a bit of a confusing one, not because of the mode itself or how to play it, it's more about how it feels the mode wants you to approach and play it versus what it actually ends up being. You may have heard a bunch of the rumors leading up to the release saying this mode is a Tarkov-like mode for Battlefield 2042, where the stakes are high. A more hardcore mode, if you will. It doesn't really accomplish that. In case you're not aware, here's a quick breakdown of Hazard Zone. You and 3 others form a squad to go into one of the multiplayer maps, locate and collect data drives, and extract out of one of 2 extraction points that occur at different times during the game. Even if only one of your squad mates makes the extraction, you all reap the rewards. However, if you die, you lose what you brought in. There's a tiny metagame where you earn credits during each game that you could use to buy weapons and equipment for your next outing, so conceptually, you'll want to think about what you're bringing in. The way the game feels once you get in feels like you're supposed to take things slowly, methodically. However, in all of my games, my squad and I immediately started sprinting towards the first data drive. Fight like it's a regular Battlefield game, and rinse and repeat. The game doesn't allow for this kind of slow pacing. Rather, the way the game is built encourages a more accelerated gameplay style. It does somewhat feel like it could end up being a fun game mode, but maybe with more players and less AI-controlled enemies and a single extraction event may help make use of the large player area a bit more, as well as make things a bit more dramatic. Of course, there are things about this game mode I wish they would change. In my games, I noticed that if you aren't in a combat vehicle, you're as good as dead. Unless someone on your squad by some miracle brought a recoilless rocket launcher and is a god with the thing, you're gonna have a bad time. I've had vehicles roll up on my squad and decimate us while fighting other infantry or while moving from place to place, and it's pretty frustrating to deal with that. Keep in mind, a lot of real estate on these maps are open areas, so getting caught in the open when you inevitably have to cross an open field is a death sentence. This is also the mode people tend to point to when they make the argument that Battlefield 2042 was originally intended to be a battle royale. And I could see why, with specialists being a thing a la Apex Legends, as well as the massive maps. I can absolutely understand why people would come to that conclusion. In all honesty, I was excited to see what Hazard Zone had in store, but ultimately, in its current state, I'm pretty disappointed. Now, if they add on to it, maybe even have some kind of base building metagame similar to Escape from Tarkov, remove combat vehicles altogether, maybe even a questing system, and an inventory to manage, this might get some traction for hardcore players, but the only thing I would say can't be fixed is the core gameplay. This is so rooted into the game that it's basically asking DICE to make a whole ass new game, which isn't really something I think they do. If anything, revamp how the gameplay feels for Hazard Zone on its own specifically. That would be a nice way to go about it, but we all know that won't happen. For now, let's move on to the final offering of the game, Portal. This, I believe, will be the one thing that could save Battlefield 2042. It truly is a love letter to Battlefield. The ability to make your own game modes with its own logic and then publish them for anyone to play is such an amazing concept. However, we've already seen parts of the community take advantage of that, making XP farm servers, which isn't new to Battlefield in any way, and resulted in DICE limiting the XP you can gain from playing Portal. This may be subject to change in the future, but we'll see. I managed to play some Portal games myself, starting with the base game modes for 1942, Bad Company 2, and Battlefield 3. They all play well, mostly feel like they did back in the day, but with new updated visuals and the added bonus we can make anything we want using these assets is pretty awesome. Though a lot of what plagues 2042 also plagues Portal, mostly having to do with gameplay, things like weapon bloom and some things specific to Portal, like not being able to modify your sights in Bad Company 2 related game modes. After a little tinkering, I found out that it's swapping sights instead of like switching them out from a collection. You only get 3 sights from what I could see, so I guess there's that. Portal is something that will keep the community coming back to 2042, at least for now. This mode was definitely made for longevity, and I feel it was a very smart move to include this. Now, if only they would include Battlefield 2142 in the Titan game mode. One can dream. You know, speaking of dreaming, let me hash out a quick wish list. Number 1, Battlefield 2142 and Titan in Portal. Number 2, traditional game modes like TDM and Small Conquest for 2042. Number 3, a specific playlist for classes in All Out War. Number 4, more weapons with a mix of older ones like the AK-47 and M416 and newer fictional ones. And finally, number 5, more maps for existing Portal games. And I only say this because I really want to play Strike at Karkan and Battlefield 3 again. Alright, I'm done. That's my wish list for right now. This game has a long road ahead of it, with bugs needing to be fixed, missing features and modes, a mediocre new mode and specialists. Battlefield 2042 is in a rough state. We've heard it before, and I'll say it here as well. DICE should have delayed this game again. They did it once, they should have done it a second time. I feel it has the capacity to be great, but it needs more time. It truly does look like we're in for another Battlefield 4 situation, and I'm upset that I spent as much money as I did on this game, just to, get the early access, soundtrack, and all that shit. The marketing team certainly did their job, and did it well, because I was suckered into putting money up front for this, and this is the product we all got. It truly is a disaster piece. Even after all my critique, I still feel 2042 can be saved. However, in its current state, I cannot recommend this game to anyone. Now, we just have to wait for DICE to step up their game and hopefully listen to the community. And we may be waiting for a while. Thanks for bearing with me through this video. It's definitely been a roller coaster of emotions, but hey, I had to say my piece. If you enjoyed this video, please consider hitting the like and subscribe buttons. It really does help me out. If you wanted to keep up with me outside of YouTube, all my socials are in the description below, so feel free to check those out. Stay hydrated. I hope you have a good one, and I'll catch you next time.